Hello and welcome to History Time. In my last episode, I had spoken about a multi-storied building that is going to come up on Periyar EVR Road facing Central Station. In that episode, I had spoken about People's Park. Lots of people have written to me asking as to what happened to that park and where is it now and why is it that I did not talk about it in my episode. So today's episode is dedicated to People's Park and what happened to it. Come, let us see that history. Before we embark on a story of People's Park, we need to know what was there in the area where Central Station stands today. In the 1850s, when the Central Jail was constructed facing what would eventually become the Central Station, the first superintendent of the prison was an officer known as Isaac Tyrrell. He wrote his biography, and in it he documents very clearly what was there in the space facing the jail. You will not believe it. He says there were enormous ponds in which people went fishing. It was in this area that all that construction that we are familiar with would come up later. In 1859, the then governor of Madras Presidency, Sir Charles Trevelyan, decreed that there should be a park put up in this entire space. 116 acres of land was cordoned off, and within 2 years, there was a beautiful park that was created. It was full of trees. It had 11 miles of road in it. It had 2 ponds. It had a swimming pool, tennis courts, a bandstand, and eventually a zoo. It was full of attractions, and eventually people would come and begin to flock to it right through the year. Truly, as per its name, it became People's Park. Every year in January, a fair was organized which was known as the People's Park Fair or the Parktown Fair. This would happen around the Pongal festival, and it began in the final decades of the 19th century. Exhibitions would be put up, sports competitions would take place, all kinds of other events would happen. In the 1880s, a dreadful fire swept through the Parktown Fair and several hundred people were killed. But even then, it did nothing to diminish the popularity of the event, and it continued to be held for almost 100 years. It was but natural that in a congested city like Madras, construction would happen on every open available space. In 1873, the first of these came up, and that was Central Station. It came up on the eastern fringe of People's Park, and railway tracks were laid all the way from Rayapuram to Central Station. Eventually, Central would become the most important railway terminus of the city. Next to Central, in the 1880s, came up Victoria Public Hall, and that would become the town hall. All kinds of theatrical events, musical recitations, other programs would take place, and people began to flock there to attend the programs. In between Victoria Public Hall and Central Station, in the 1890s, late 1890s, came up Moor Market, which was the market for the whole city. And then finally in 1913, on the other side of Victoria Public Hall, you got Ripon Buildings, the headquarters of our corporation. So there was a railway station, there was a town hall, there was the city's market, and there was the headquarters of the corporation. All of these built on the southern and eastern fringes of People's Park. Therefore, the land that was available to the park was beginning to diminish. But people still flocked to it. And in the early 1900s, the South Indian Athletic Association, which was a very popular sporting body of Madras city, began to use the January festival to put up its own sporting events. This only added to the attraction. There would be boxing matches with King Kong inviting people to come and box with him. There would be Gunboat Jack, who in a wooden tower would ride his motorcycle almost vertically and perform daredevil feats. There would be Rekla races, two-wheeled carriages linked to horses or cows or bullocks, and races would happen. All of these were exceedingly popular at that time. In 1949, the Corporation of Madras decided that it was going to construct a stadium on a large part of People's Park. That eventually would become the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium or the Corporation Stadium as we know of it today. Initially meant to accommodate 20,000 people, it would expand over a period of time, and it continues to remain a venue for many events. In the 1990s, it would acquire an indoor stadium as well, which could seat 8,000 people. All these constructions gradually meant that the land from People's Park was being taken away bit by bit. Then in the 1980s, Moor Market was gutted in an enormous fire, and the suburban railway terminal was built in its place. New railway lines were laid on what was once People Park land. Then finally, the zoo left in the 1980s to Vandalur. Thereafter, a building was constructed on the ponds that were there in People's Park, and that came to be known as the Lily Pond Complex. Eventually, there was no Lily Pond, but the pond remains commemorated in name. This was the place where the shopkeepers affected by the Moor Market fire would be housed, and they continue to have their shops in that particular building. Finally, there was nothing left of People's Park. It's a very sad story, but it survives in name because the entire area is known as Park Town even today. You may ask me a question, is there really nothing left of People's Park? Well, that's not entirely true. There is still a beautiful garden, a small garden that is left, and that is known as My Lady's Garden. If you need to see it, you need to go down Sydenham's Road, which is now known as Raja Muttaya Sale, go behind Ripon Building and take a right onto one of a very narrow thoroughfare, and at the end of it you will come to a beautiful park full of trees and statues. Early in the morning and then in the evening, you will find lots of people from North Madras or North Chennai coming there to walk, to exercise, to do yoga and all kinds of things. It's a beautiful little place. This is the Mayor's Garden. Up until the 1970s, the mayor would conduct his or her events and parties over here, and even flower shows. Thereafter, the mayor's events don't happen there, but it has been handed over to the people, and the people still keep coming here. To see My Lady's Garden and People's Park in all their glory, you need to look at Tamil cinema of the black and white era. For example, if you look at the 1950s film Missi Amma, you will find that there is a scene shot in it where Gemini Ganesan and Savitri are seated in a park bench conversing with each other, and Sharangapani arrives, and then there is a conversation between the three. That is when the plot of the story gets going. Go and see that particular episode on YouTube, and you'll get an idea as to what People Park was all about. If you like this episode, share it, like it, and then subscribe to this channel. I'll be back with you in the coming weeks with fresh episodes on the history of Madras, that is Chennai. Bye for now.